And as an analyst, I get to look at these big numbers like $6 trillion and break it down into the components that, number one, we can understand, but number two, that we can build strategies against and really drive in the marketplace. So, $6 trillion is a big number. You can take the consumer piece off of that right away, and we're starting to talk about $3.5 to $4 trillion. But if you break it down by buyer, if you break it down by geography or industry or segment, sector, or size of the market, if you break it down by product set, there's literally 35 million permutations inside that number. So there's a lot to talk about. When you actually break it down, though, the first thing you understand is it's a big market, it's a growing market, and everybody wants to be a part of it. So there are millions of companies today in the technology ecosystem. There are millions more coming in. Everybody seems to be a part of it. Every company in every industry is becoming a technology company. So as a team, what do we do to address this? We start looking at the opportunities. When you look, for example, in the multi-cloud, hybrid cloud area, when you look in security, two of the biggest focuses for the team here, there are big, complex areas that no one company owns. And what becomes more important is the ecosystem that wrap around it. So in a world like security, where you have 7 different layers of security and 17 layers below that, there is no one vendor today that does all things there. What becomes more important is the connective tissue between all of the layers. And to solve a specific customer's security threat vectors, get to zero trust, do all the things you need to do in a cybersecurity approach, it becomes more important in terms of how to connect all those things together, how to implement, how to integrate, how to make it all compliant, and obviously solve that business outcome. The same thing goes in the cloud. We talk about big players like Microsoft and AWS and Azure. We talk about the big SaaS companies like Salesforce and ServiceNow and Workday and Marketo and NetSuite. They're all growing in big ways. In the last week, you'll have heard 50% plus growth in Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud. The head of AWS just got a big promotion. We hear about the big numbers coming out of the multi-cloud era, but we know that customers buy, on average, 7 different things. It's not just one company that does everything. And then the next conversation is, what is the multiplier to that? What is the opportunity for all of us? And as a value-added distributor, what is the connective tissue that brings all of that together, the ecosystem together to solve for that customer? Because we know today in the multi-cloud era, we know in SaaS, we know in security, that every dollar of vendor revenue kicks off more than $5 of opportunity. And that's the multiplier effect that I think we should all be thinking about. So today, if you took that multiplier, and many of these big companies, you can go and read these reports to the decimal point of what it is, but understand that 2/3 of that opportunity is professional services. And 1/3 is the software and hardware and other pieces that attach to it. So if you look at emerging technology, if you look at these layers of software and cloud type of products, and then you look into the multiple layers of services, this is what we all pull together. And whether we pull that all together in a marketplace digital way, if we pull that together in almost a physical way post-COVID, whichever ways we pull it together, the fact of the matter is every single customer opportunity has layers of opportunity on top of it. So as we break it down, where are the opportunities to bring companies together? Professional services firms, system integrators, bring managed service providers, bring ISVs and VARs and resellers and agents and integrators, and all different kinds. There's almost 16 different models today in technology that companies are out making money. And then there's other kinds of models where 81% of accountants today and CPA firms are doing tech services. 78% of digital agencies, marketing agencies, are doing tech services. Why? Because in many companies, the marketing buyer spends more on technology than the CIO or CISO or CTO. So it's a strange world where 65% of, for example, cloud decisions now happen outside of IT. You've got those people who are functional executives, marketing, sales, operations, finance, spending more of their time now on technology. So not only is every technology or every company becoming a technology company, every person in those companies is also becoming a tech person. And In those ways, a marketing buyer, for example, that's spending more than the CIO, there's 8,000 different SaaS companies that compete on that MarTech stack alone. And all of that multi-cloud opportunity and the connection points within and how all that gets solved for really rolls back to us as the connective tissue, as the value-added distributor who can make sure they understand that end customer's needs, understands all the elements of the multiplier effect, and really for all members of that, the customer, all of the partners that will fulfill that multiplier, and at a distribution level, it's a win-win-win for everyone as we drive better business outcomes, as we solve for customer issues and solutions in a new layer of scale that we've never seen before. So there's other things at play as well, Barry. Another thing we're watching really closely is this movement into subscription and consumption models. We saw research where Accenture went and asked CEOs in every company, in every geography, in every industry about the future, and 76% of them think that their current business model will be unrecognizable in 5 years. We read stories every day outside of our industry about Netflix, about Tesla, about almost their Airbnb. There's a story everywhere about disruption. And these CEOs are starting to think about the ecosystems as the number one disruptor for the next 5 years. And those companies, all of our end customers who get ecosystems right, are going to be the winners on the stock market and winners, obviously, in front of their customers as well. So this is the point where in subscription and consumption models, you've got big companies just in the last couple of months. IBM jettisoned their services group, and now with multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, and AI, become a 100% subscription business. Michael Dell announced all of Dell Technologies, all 7 technologies that drive $93 billion. EMC, VMware, is going 100% there and accelerating the journey because of COVID, because of the pandemic. Cisco announced that about a week before that. Chuck Robbins said all of Cisco would be a 100% subscription model. You look at HPE, who's been on this journey for a while with GreenLake. Well, they announced by 2022, which is 10 months from now, they're going to fully be there. So those 4 companies are just an element of this, but they make up a really big chunk of the client server era that we went through in the 90s and low 2000s. So here is an example of big traditional product skewed companies moving into a subscription consumption metered model that is based on embedded technology, it's based on white labeled technology. And guess what? There needs to be a connective tissue in those 7 layers of that customer solution that can pull together all of the hardware, software, and services, the atoms and the bits in one place to serve it up digitally, which I know the team is working hard in that area, to serve it up in a way that everyone works together. This idea of collaboration across an ecosystem is different than the way we've thought about it in the past. When we thought about your customers, when we think about partners in general, we always equated the channel to the actual transaction. We thought about revenue growth, we talked about profitability in the channel, we talked about customer sat. Well, those conversations are quickly changing. Because the one thing we know now about all the millions of new partners coming into this conversation is that 80% of them are non-transacting partners. They actually will never buy a nickel from you, but they're part of the equation of the customer. They're in that influence stage to vendor selection. They may walk the deal into your marketplace or your ability to sell. And then they participate in the long term with those customers every 30 days forever. So they're there driving adoption. They're there driving integrations and stickiness. And they're working on upsell and cross-sell, enriching the contract, again, every 30 days because the customer journey now never ends. So you have partners coming into different parts of the journey. You have partners coming in from a different business model perspective. Again, they're not pure resell. They're looking at other values. And most of these partners are looking at that multiplier effect. So if a certain dollar of cloud or security kicks off $5, They're looking inside that $5 of downstream opportunity, the integration work, the compliance work, the implementation work, the training. They're looking at downstream in terms of the continuity and the data. They've got all different views of it. But the point is they all want to earn, $1 or $2 for every dollar that vendor dollar drives inside that customer. So it's a different world. And when you're the connective tissue of that, you've got to think in a transactional way. You've got to think in a non-transactional way. You've got to think in a traditional sense, and then you've got to think in a non-traditional sense. The average customer today will bring in 5 different partners in their early digital journey. Why this is important, a couple of big reasons that are changing quickly, is that today we're going through a massive change in the buyer themselves. We know in 4 to 5 years, we're going through a demographic change where the majority of tech buyers will be millennials. We know that they go through that journey differently. And in many cases, the majority of them are looking for digital or digital-only journeys. They're not looking at talking to a salesperson here, at your partner site, anywhere, in a vendor, anywhere. They're not looking to talk to anybody in a traditional sales model. They're not looking to go to a marketing website and type in the correct information. So they may be completely anonymous up until the point of vendor selection. And we're seeing in 51% of cases today, they're getting to that vendor selection in an anonymous way so that your vendors and you may not even know that you lost a deal. You may not even know there was a deal. So this is a big difference. So if they're going to choose 5 partners that write ebooks and sit on the board of the association and do keynotes and podcasts and all the ways that they educate themselves at those early journeys, and they're going to trust these people, they become part of the fabric of the channel. They become part of fabric of all of us to drive value and understanding where these customers' digital breadcrumbs are. Because the second element that's changing quickly, even to the point of last week, is that companies like Apple and others are going to work a lot on privacy, allowing all of us from a consumer perspective to be more anonymous on the internet. But for these buyers who are seeking these digital journeys, it's going to work for them as well. And all of these MarTech tools that have followed them and traced them across the internet and looked at all their behaviors, it's going to change pretty significantly in terms of your visibility to that customer. So both for you and for the vendors and for the partners, everyone is going to have this battle on that early customer journey to get more and more visibility there. The only way to do that is to be in one of those 5 chairs or to influence one or more of those 5 chairs to get you into the conversation. So this is different. So this is every security purchase. This is every purchase of cloud, multi-cloud, hybrid cloud. This is kind of the future battle, and we've got to prepare ourselves. But it becomes an ecosystem story here, because why do 76% of CEOs think ecosystems are the most important thing for their business model? It's getting access to the customers early and often and getting to that point of vendor selection and being walked into the transaction. But the transaction in a subscription model, as we said, is only the first 30 days. After that, you have to be doing all of those things I talked about, like adoption and stickiness and upsell and cross-sell forever. So there's no way to succeed today without all 3 of those ecosystem elements taking hold. And again, that's not all going to happen generically or just sporadically. There has to be connective tissue in all of that. And I think in the end, when we look back 10 years from now, the value-added distributor, the value-added part of it, will be less about the credit and capital facilities. It'll be less about the 3PL logistics. It'll be less about the marketing enablement pieces. And it'll be more about this connective tissue. When you talk about customers, and I listed at the beginning 5 different ways that they fit, whether it's a particular type of buyer, like a marketing buyer, whether it's in a particular sub-industry, there's 297 sub-industries. It's not about healthcare anymore. It's about a clinic with 50 doctors, which is different than a dentist office, which is different than a small hospital. It's about geography. We know that the channel selling into that mid-sized clinic in Scotland is different than upstate New York, very different than Japan. We know that there are regional nuances, legislation, regulation, compliance that go into selling into customers. Number 4, we know that there's different segments, sector, and sizes. I said 50 doctors on purpose because their resources, their skills, and their ability to drive outcomes is so much different than companies of different sizes and in different segments. And then just in the product area, we used to talk about hardware and software and services. Well, today we're talking 26 layers of products. And then you can't have that security conversation, like I said, without going 7 layers deeper and then 17 layers after that. So these are the 35 million opportunities in front of customers, and trying to figure out who those 5 partners are for each of those 35 million things becomes almost the challenge of our generation. The next decade will be who wins in that place of scale and who can provide all of the enablement and collaboration and things like that to make it work in very specific areas. Again, there is no one winner. Even though we have trillion-dollar companies today, and there's 5 of them in the tech world, they're not going to win. They're just going to be a slice of the cake. And there's other players. There's 175,000 software companies. There's over 800,000 emerging tech companies. There's all kinds of players flooding in to this conversation. And whatever that 7-layer solution is going to be, whoever those 5 people are wrapped around that customer are going to be, becomes less important than what is the connective tissue to bring all of that together and make it work and drive outcomes, get that end customer marketing buyer promoted. So maybe they run the mid-sized clinic at the end of the day. So Barry, in the end, that's kind of what we're watching for the next decade. There are so many converging trends, but I think for everyone listening today, it all plays into our wheelhouse. It's things that we know how to do, and it's things and how to bring people together and how to bring technology together and how to serve, end clients at scale is what we know how to do. And I think that it all plays to us. And for the opportunity is endless.